The symbol. In a situation of traumatic overwhelm, one of the survival techniques that many trauma participants and survivors adopt is a narrowing of focus. And so what I want you to imagine is a 360-degree vision in which multiple waves of traumatic events are building on one another, creating a cascade effect that is beyond your conscious ability to process, and that triggers the reptilian brain, the fight, flight, freeze mechanism of our crocodile heritage a couple 100 million years ago, which is designed to keep us alive in a sociopathic environment. Now, the reason a trauma survivor experiences this environment as sociopathic is precisely because there is an overwhelming cascade of events happening that are beyond the individual's capacity to deal with, that do or have the appearance, through the lens of the trauma survivor, threaten the survival of the individual. Now, when everywhere you look there seems to be uncertainty and threat, and when helplessness itself becomes the biggest issue, for example, adrenal collapse, adrenal fatigue can literally kill a person or cause a traffic accident or any number of things. Now, ties into this statement, I think, was Eisenhower. The only thing you need to fear is fear itself. It's not the only thing you need to fear, and sometimes fear is your friend, but at heightened states of chronic panic and trauma, fear actually can become your greatest enemy through the function of adrenal collapse. Now, in all of this overwhelm, when help is not forthcoming, meaning there are specific things that specific people could do immediately that would bring enormous relief, but no one is doing those things, and this gets exaggerated when they are asked for, and no one is doing these things. In this situation, one of the coping mechanisms is narrow beam focus. And what I experienced for myself in this state was that it was too overwhelming, too hopeless, too terrifying, too painful to freely roam within my own psyche. And so what I did was I froze. I held as much tension as possible in all my muscles, and I fixed all of my attention on what seemed like the most promising source of hope or help. Now, I did a quick assessment, and in this dynamic with the Human Awareness Institute facilitator body, it seemed to me that if they would apologize and own even a third of their impact, that it would communicate a multitude of things. And what I want to talk about is heuristics. Heuristics is when one thing becomes symbolic of many things. It's when you create a place finder, well, at least this is my use of the word, when you create a place finder where if this one thing goes well, then everything else is good. Now, this is being used specifically because the beam of concentration has gotten so narrow as a way of coping with overwhelm. I mean, just imagine yourself in a disco with brilliant lights and sounds, and it's just completely, mind-blowing. And you need to think, because you don't feel safe. I mean, discos are fun when you feel safe and secure and all of that. But when you feel like your life is about to end and all this is going on, it feels like a threat. So you might zoom in your eyes and put on blinders and see just what's in front of you. Now, the benefit is you're blocking out stimulation of an overwhelming nature that you cannot process. This is stimulation attuned to processing capacity. And when your processing capacity is already overloaded with crisis and trauma of things that have built up, and then you have this new wave, you don't have the bandwidth to process something new. You can't even evaluate how safe you are, which is in itself a trauma, because there's so many things built up. And so you narrow the view. You eliminate 90% of the disco lights, 90% of the sound, put in earmuffs, and you're just looking to hear one thing from one direction and to see one symbol that it's safe. Now, if that comes to you once you've done this narrowing process, you can feel safe to start opening up. You feel like you've got reserve. For example, with the high facilitator apology, if I had 7 or 8 people who actually put my interest first, who actually cared enough about me to not sell me out for their agendas of appearing like great teachers of love, intimacy, and sexuality. Obviously, it's a ding to their image that they've induced a client into this state. Of course, it's a ding to their image, because for them to do this as a sustained group of people over a 12-year period speaks of a very large blind spot. And maybe they don't know how to deal with it. But either way, I'm in this little box where I've done the calculation that if these people are willing to publicly apologize, now I've got access to my community again. I don't have to explain it. They've already explained it. Now I don't have to worry about being called a snitch or a bad person for gossip, for trying to communicate what's going on inside me, because they've had the responsibility to do it themselves. So I take that weight off me. And I have a real chance to, with a trusted support team, meaning I don't trust someone who cannot apologize for this level of negligence. But if they apologize, now I can trust them, you see? And so if I trust them, I'm sure I'll get out of it. But if I can't trust them, if I lose my community, if I go through the extraordinary levels of humiliation of being an American man in extraordinary need induced by trusting an incompetent facilitator, now I'm not sure I can handle that and be alone with this state and be alone not knowing whether my body will survive the adrenal collapse. So this one little thing, an apology willingly, happily, and thoroughly made immediately, it changes the entire world. Now, what's fragile about this and what's very vulnerable about this is what happens when one narrows out the stimulation because it's too overwhelming. One assesses. I mean, I know High hates spending money, so let's ask for an apology, right? I know the facilitators are busy, so let's not ask them to fly to Thailand and really build trust again, and let's not ask them to, let's ask them to do something they can do if they want to. So this becomes a symbol then of, do they care about me? It becomes a symbol of, am I safe? It becomes a symbol of, will I have community support? it becomes a symbol of many other things that if I have that support, I can start freely moving and facing my terror because I have support. But if I don't, then I don't know what I don't know, which is a new trauma. I get the new message, you don't matter, your safety doesn't matter. I cannot trust them, which, since I don't know where else to go, since I've lost my community and 4 of my therapists at the same moment, and since I don't fully understand why a therapist would ever behave this way, and I chose them. I mean, I can't get out of the responsibility that I chose 4 incompetent people who would all sell me out to put their self-image or legal concerns ahead of my life. Well, that's a pretty bad judgment call. Now, unfortunately, in the United States, it's not all that uncommon. I mean, if you take 10 therapists and they all make a mistake that could cost them public image or licensing or a career, and they have the ability, they think, to wheedle out of it at the expense of their patient, how many American therapists will put their patient safety first unequivocally? Is it 1 in 10? Is it 2 in 10? Well, apparently it wasn't any one of the high facilitators, because not one did. And this threw me. It told me I'm in a different universe. I'm not in a universe where the patient comes first. I'm not in a universe where empathy triumphs over fear. I'm not in a universe where responsibility and competency is willingly taken by leaders. I'm in a universe where, because I'm currently invisible and they think they can control communication, because I'm in a state of profound need and somewhat incoherent, which means it's very difficult in a culture such as ours, which is all about looking good. It's all about looking good. I don't look very good when I'm terrified and dissociative and, desperately need something immediately. I don't look very good. Because what this culture does is it flips things, right? See, it doesn't look very good that 1 in 7 Americans are in so much pain that they're addicted to a substance. Research has been done to show that if you do not have an underlying trauma or pain, it's not very hard to kick a habit. It's when you have an underlying chronic pain that is not dealt with that the substance provides relief with that makes it very hard to kick an addiction. This is true in animals as well. Rats that have a beautiful forest with sex available, with nice natural habitat, and they can take cocaine or they can eat good healthy food. They'll pick the healthy food. They will not become addicted. Rats in a laboratory with strobe lights on them, with no social engagement, with sociopathic people in white coats looking at them and not giving a damn about their well-being and seeing if they will addict themselves to drugs and just for their doctorate and experiment. Well, those rats would rather get out of that hell, the hell created by a sociopathic group of medical professionals, to, just numb out. But a healthy animal actually chooses a healthy alternative. If it's there. When it's not there, we become addicted. Now, we don't as a culture say, wow, we are fucking people's life up. Wow, this is a shitty culture. Wow, it's our job to evolve the culture to a point where we do not traumatize our citizens on a regular basis with this, and this. Let's get to work. No, our culture is so lazy in its evolution that every time someone loses as a result of the probability field created by the culture, 1 in 7 Americans for this, 1 in 3 domestic relationships with domestic violence, 50% divorce, whatever it is, it's a shitty statistic. And statistics are created by the culture and the environment. How many people who take a high workshop find that they are in a sustainable, healthy relationship where they can deal with what comes their way? They like themselves and they like their partner. 2%, 5%? How many interns, how many team members are in healthy relationships where both people feel like they're winning and that is sustainable for even a year? How many? What's the percentage? This is about the environment. It has nothing to do with the individual, because you can go to a tribe where they do things completely different and the statistics are completely different. No one in that tribe gets cancer. 1 in 4 here. No one there has domestic violence. Or another tribe, 100% of couples have domestic violence, because it's not about the people. If you were born in that tribe, you'd be party to domestic violence. If you were born in this other tribe, you'd be like the Thoe tribe, 0. No police force, no violence, no shouting, just a peaceful life. Because it's not about the people, it's about the culture that induces different types of statistical behavior in a group of 100 people. Now, we don't like taking responsibility for cultural design. When's the last time a president has gotten up and said, let's change our culture? It's shitty. Let's look at the demographics. Let's look at other countries around the world. Let's look at other cultures in human history, and let's adopt the qualities that would bring out qualities in America and in Americans that we would actually be proud to export. How about it? When's the last time we actually do this? No. We just pretend that the culture is wonderful. And then when it betrays this demographic, when it makes, 80% of all Black American or African American people do not have as easy a time dealing with their sense of self-worth, etc., as other members of the population. That is a statistical felt experience by an entire race, because we are all racist in this country, unless we do an extraordinary amount of deep work, which even the researchers show that Black people feel slightly more hesitant when they see a Black face on measured instruments than when they see a white face. So if you've got racism drilled into people, and then you don't clean it up, you just say, slavery is over, whatever. We've decimated the self-esteem of an entire race for years. And then we just want to snap our fingers, no great apology, no compensation, no therapy. I mean, this is a joke. And then we're not going to help everyone not be racist. We're not going to give them training. No. Just fend for yourself. So that's that minority. And then we have the women, whether it was having to fight for the right to vote. I mean, it's a joke. The culture is a complete joke. But the culture is so cowardly, so irresponsible, so ignorant, so fearful, so insistent, so sociopathic at maintaining its status quo, that it passes on its inadequacies to the people who become its victims. Okay? Black people should just be more positive. Let's blame them for feeling what they actually feel in a racist culture. Women should just be more assertive, despite the fact that they're called bitchy and uppity for being assertive. Well, they should just ignore that and ignore the fact that every human being needs love and belonging. So we blame the people for a fucked up culture. It's horrific. I go to Thailand because it's less fucked up. I'm the same me, just 3 times happier in a less fucked up culture. Less fucked up. It's fucked up in different ways, but they're not the ways that have driven me crazy here. Now, the point is, once you develop this heuristic symbol, this narrow beam thing that if this one thing happens, all is well, and if this one thing happens, all is shot. In this case, the high facilitator apology. When they deny the apology, which they did, it triggers a major psychological collapse. This is the level of disowning that the facilitators are capable of. I write them an email saying, you are hurting me 1,000 times more than I think you realize. I mean, at that point, does it become more meaningful to say 1,000,000 times, 1,000,000,000 times? I mean, I don't know how to speak more directly and clearly than this. So I've done what I know how to do. And I ask for an apology about more than 10 specific, basic issues for pretending this isn't a high issue. Issue number one. I mean, they are sending themselves into a suicide dive with this, because a jury is going to have to listen to a public nonprofit committed to teaching about love and intimacy, and hear how this is not a high issue, that a high facilitator did this, accumulating, coming to, a final peak of, pushing someone to take more illegal drugs than possible, escalating a romantic relationship, dragging up every childhood trauma imaginable, and then pretending it's not a high issue. So anyone think that's good ethical behavior? You, anyone else? The high facilitators think this is great, but they've got to now put themselves into deeper and deeper boxes and into the sand, because no one else does. There's not a single person who knows anything about therapy. Of course, the facilitators are not licensed, so they may not know much about these lines, but everyone else does. At this point, I know more than the facilitators, because I've read the training manuals to figure out that, no, I wasn't actually crazy. Because when you collapse in this way, self-doubt on a major level comes in. Well, now, the ripple effects are enormous for this level of betrayal. But what I want to do in this video is just illustrate how and why this symbolic gesture comes into focus under extreme circumstances, and how meaningful it is when it is resolved, and how it destroys people's lives when that symbol of, am I safe? Am I cared about? Am I welcome? Do I belong? Am I valuable? Gets ripped to shreds, and in many cases with not a single acknowledgement from the facilitators, just silence. You don't even matter enough for a reply. That's how committed we are to not seeing you, and to not giving you the most basic expression of human dignity. We're this committed to it, and we're going to create a united front to banish you, coupled with the email disengagement where your accounts will magically no longer work, coupled with the repeated bizarre statements that this is not a high issue, we're just committed to the entire world winning. It's like, how do you deal with all this? It's impossible. And no abuse survivor should ever have to. But of course, High is correct in saying, it's not personal. I don't take it personally. This is how High treats its people when there's a conflict between the facilitators and a participant's well-being, and they think they can get away with it. Well, we can't have that. We can't have people paying money to get entrapped in that kind of a dynamic and having their lives destroyed. So it necessitates the end of the High organization or a major shift in power. What wouldn't necessitate that would be, you don't even have to ask for an apology. We are so very sorry for doing this, for this, this, and this. We're sorry for our fear. We're sorry for our slow response. We're sorry that we recommended this person. We're sorry we didn't train him well. We're sorry that you've been hurt and taken it on as your stuff because we were too cowardly to do it. We're sorry we made ourselves so busy that we pretend you're not a priority. We're sorry about all of it. And we're going to do everything that we can to get you support. You see? It lifts off. I've never wanted money. It's more come in as a very twisted back thing, and realizing repeatedly that I've been sold out for money and that no one should have to go through that, that you need to respond with a discipline that touches the person where they feel pain. Because when an abuser is dissociative, sociopathic, and does not feel even 1,000 times more pain than you communicate, then the question is, well, what do they feel pain about? Peter had pain around spending $2,000 to pay Anne to facilitate a mixture that was a third abusive, a third not helpful or not, and a third helpful. This is typical therapeutic experience of patients. A third of it is abusive, a third of it is helpful, a third of it is, can't tell if it's helpful or not. And so he'd spent $2,000, and this was too much for Peter, so he was very clear about that. And I'm looking at, my whole finances just turning upside down in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, I guess money is where we have to discipline them. Because any therapist that thinks $2,000 is worth more than a person's life and more than a person's heart should not be in therapy. Now, you cannot instill character, meaning if people really don't value a person's life more than $2,000 as long as they can get out of it in one way or another, okay, well, that's their value system. But if they will do the right thing by their patient for fear of being sued in the $1 to $2 million range and behave well after that, well, I guess that's, a step forward, perhaps. Anyway, thank you for grasping this piece, because where I want to go with it is if you see someone in trauma, I want you to pay very, very close attention to their primary request and to do something that may not seem very important to you, but may mean everything to them. Not because, what does an apology do if I've lost $70,000 of my money and da-da-da-da-da. It does a lot to feel that things are turning for the better. And you need that when you're in collapse, when you're in trauma.